All right, everyone, welcome back to Inherent Success Podcast, or this is your guide to self-discovery, where we discuss all things self-development. We talk a little about business, relationships, health and wellness, and all based on transformational stories. And on today's episode, I'm really excited to introduce our guest today, George Moulos. Welcome to the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Did I say your last name right?
You said it right. You said it right. It's hard. All my high
I know.
school teachers always got it wrong, but you got it right. You got it right.
Yeah, I know we were chatting a little bit about our last names and how sometimes people, when it's complicated, we're both from like different countries and our backgrounds. So when it's complicated, people mispronounce my last name all the time, even in school too. So I can relate.
Yeah. It's weird because there's so much in a name, especially in it. I mean, like you mentioned, this podcast is about self-discovery, and a name is, whether you like it or not, it's how you identify. It's when people say, "Hey, nice to meet you. What's your name?" It's the first thing they ask, and it's like you can love a name, you can hate a name. And I used to hate my name because Moulos in Greek means bastard, right? And
Wow.
yeah, yeah. But and I used to hate it because Greeks like Spanish Spanish people have middle names. I know Spanish people even have like four names sometimes. So we have a middle name, and that's always your father's name. And I have a complicated relationship with my father. So like my first name is George for my grandfather, for my mum's side. And then my dad's first name, my dad's last name. I was like, I fucking hate my name. But then over time, I read into it and I love history. I dived into the history of Yorgos George, which comes from the first incarnation of Zeus. Zeus Yorgos is the first name of Zeus. And then Anastasios, my middle name, means resurrection. And they were like Roman emperors called Anastasios. And Moulos is bastard. There's no cool way to say it, Moulos, to spin Moulos. But, like you are, how you identify with it and how you kind of, sometimes you can have a name that and you can see it as a bad thing. A lot of Greeks will hear my name, they're like, bastard, fuck, that's not good. And then when they kind of when
Yeah.
I tell my story and I tell the story of how that came about, being that when the British took over my island where I'm from, they just named all the kids who were illegitimate or didn't know where they were from bastards, and that's where Mulos comes from. Even though a lot of my ancestry, going back 800 years, comes from the top echelons of the East Roman Empire and all this stuff. It's like it's the ups and downs of history and ups and downs of families and names and people. But yeah, it's funny to start at zero, which is where my story started. So hopefully we can change that in my lifetime. But I wear it as a badge of honor these days.
Absolutely. It's very interesting you said that. Of course, there's always the interpretation, right? It's like, okay, these are my cards that I'm dealt with. What can I make? Like, what's the beauty of this? And it can be as small as like your name, right? And it's like, you think, okay, wow, like my name sucks, but you diving in deeper into the history of it, it's just like, it just gives you a different perspective. I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it really is for me. Like self discovery was one, just reading about history and diving further and further into it, like through my life. And the other thing too is um, just being curious. Like when I lived in Barcelona, I mentioned I lived in Spain basically every year for the last 6 years. And like a name can mean nothing. And to most people, names mean nothing. And randomly, absolutely randomly, I stayed on this road called Carrer de Roger de Flor in Barcelona. And that's just a name, right? It means nothing. And I'm Greek, Spain, Greece, we ain't got that much in common, let's be honest. But if you read far enough into anything, you'll find something. So I read into this Carrer de Roger de Flor since I was living on the street. And Roger de Flor was a Catalan mercenary who campaigned in Greece for being paid by the East Roman Emperor, who was Greek, to fight Turks, right? And then eventually, when the Greeks didn't pay, surprise, surprise, they cut this guy's head off because they're like, let's just kill him and they'll pay. His army, his mercenary army, then conquered all of Athens, all of Thebes, and owned, like, this Catalan mercenary company owned Greek, parts of Greece. Where I am now, they own this part. So it's like, what the hell? How did I discover part about my country's culture and my country and myself by reading some street name. It's crazy, but self discovery, I think, in a large part is curiosity too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%. And this is very interesting and I'm very intrigued because I mean, history is not really up there, but I do learn a lot from, Jonathan, from my boyfriend. He does dive deep into the history of Greek and he's always like, oh, look at this, like read about this, how like most of the time, like they were fighting for islands, right? Like they were fighting for like to own something, and that's why there's a lot of like feud with like from Greece and different countries from my understanding and from what he's taught me. I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. But I do agree with you with that, like it does correlate with self discovery as far as like, okay, who am I really? It's kind of like the same thing. It's like, who am I? What am I? What gifts am I inherited with? Right. And that's like the
Yeah,
purpose of this podcast too. And I
one hundred
love that.
percent.
That was beautifully said.
And
Yeah.
I
So
think more
Joe,
now than ever too. Sorry to
yeah.
jump in. I know there's a bit of a
No, go
delay, but
ahead,
like
go ahead.
to stress that
No,
point,
it's okay.
I think like a lot of people get mad that people who are different to them, especially in our day and age, where they're like, you know, there's a lot of different people in this world, and not everyone has the same experiences. And just knowing how hard, even just for me, and look, I'm a straight white dude, Christian dude, right? Like, there's a lot of people like me, but the journey and self discovery of who I am and how I identify, and as an entrepreneur, and all the things that I do, that was like ridiculously hard. Like that took like 10 years. So if people are having a hard time, especially now, especially my generation, I'm 26. Gen Z is has a I think a harder time now at finding how they identify with all their pronouns than ever. And do I know their exact pain? Of course not. But do I know how hard it is to find out who you are? Yeah. So I can empathize with that.
Hmm. 100%. And sometimes I always say like I'm a late bloomer, but I mean like I'm going to be 33 next week. So I'm a lot older than you, but I always say I'm a late bloomer. It takes most people discover themselves maybe at a younger age, and it can be, however they're out, like whatever they're currently in. Maybe they were like in a really really messed up home. Their environment was messed up, so they were just kind of like forced into discovering themselves and improving themselves. But sometimes they'll go that route, and sometimes other people just go a bad route of like choosing the bad, the pleasure, like let me run away from my reality. And I started my self discovery journey when I was 21. That was when I fully decided, like, I need to change. I got to take care of myself. I get to be a role model for my son, all of these things. And that was also around that time when I started my first business venture. So just like really, a lot of people, they'll start younger or they'll start around in their 20s. And there has been studies shown that when you're like 26, 25, 26, that's when your prefrontal cortex, your conscious thinking is fully developed to the point where you're very consciously aware. So that's around the time where people start like reevaluating their life, like, wow, like what, like I'm not going anywhere, or they probably are going somewhere, but they're not happy on that path. And that's when they just become so aware to the point where they're like, I need to change my life. Yeah.
100%. I think in the past 12 to 24 months, something in me clicked. I was just like, and I remember I was dating this Bulgarian girl, and in terms of self discovery, I think the women in my life have helped me in that realm massively, massively. Um, and this girl said to me, like, she was 1 year or 2 years older than me. And she said what you said, which is, your prefrontal cortex kind of develops by the time you're 25. And I kind of associated that with another quote that I remember from a book, which is that, like, the habits that people had by 25, they pretty much keep for the rest of their life. So, like, people don't really change after 25. They're pretty set in their ways. And it kind of goes to that saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I thought about that. I'm like, I think I was like 24 when I dated her. I was just like, I don't want to be like this for the rest of my life. I'm not who I want to be. I'm 24. I'm doing a bunch of shit I don't want to be doing. I got bad habits. And I was like, I remember I wrote down, like, if I don't make a certain amount of money, which is maybe a bad goal to be so specific and have it at the front of mind, but I'm like, I'm nothing if I don't do that by 25. And stupid as it may sound, I was like, I got to get my shit together by 25. And luckily I kind of did. But even in the last year, turning 26, I was just like, I got to stop doing silly stuff, like childish stuff. And I think I got so much more mature in the last year as opposed to how I was the previous years. And it's so weird as a man because, you don't, especially my generation, there's that quote from Fight Club. It's like, we're a generation of men raised by our mothers. And I have so many friends who are like that. Like, for sure, my mum did about 99.99% of the raising of me. And a lot of my friends are the same. And that builds you in a specific way. Um, and you never really know when you become a man. And you think you become a man when you're 18 or you had your first beer or you had your own job or when you left home. But every year that goes by,
Mhm.
I stop and I think, dude, I thought I was a man last year. No way. Now I'm a man. And every year that goes by, I'm like, oh, now I'm a man. Oh, now I'm more mature. Oh, now. And then like, I think maybe only the last year or two when I've taken full responsibility for everything in my life, I'm like, I think I'm a man now. Like you get to a point, you're like, okay, yeah, I think I hit the point. But it's very hard to know when you really believe you've become a man.
Andrew Huberman, he said something really amazing, and I truly agree with him on a podcast. I don't know if you know who Andrew Huberman is.
Of course,
He's
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
doctor. Yeah, he's amazing. But he said something very interesting on a podcast. He said, I don't believe that we were born, we become adults, and we get old and we die. I believe that we have different arcs in our life. So like that arc can probably look like, okay, maybe I'm growing and you're in a time of your life where you're just having fun. You're just like, you don't know what you're doing yet. You're just having fun. And then there's a time in your life where you start monking. You want to like be close. You're more in like that solitude. You want to like discover yourself. And then you're in an arc where like, okay, everything is amazing. Everything is going great. I'm successful. But then you jump into another arc. So I love how he said that because in our life, we're literally just always improving. We're always having different seasons of our lives. And yes, you're in the moment, maybe probably you're like, yes, I feel like I'm a man right now, but there's always more. Like there's always like different levels of your life, no
Yeah,
matter how old you are, and I for me, like I know when people are like, oh, I want to retire. Like, I don't think I would ever retire. I think like even when I'm 60 years old, I'll still be doing things. I'll still be traveling the world, making an impact, really doing things for people and being a servant leader. I think until I die.
100%. Yeah,
But yeah, so like I truly believe that there's different seasons of our lives where we learn so much about ourselves and whether it's good or bad. And you think, okay, what am I learning from this moment, this season in my life? So I
exactly.
love
Yeah,
that.
and it's so interesting
Hmm.
what you said about arc, like having an arc. Like I remember the guy who directed the Kingsman. What's his name? Oh, I'd snatch. It's this director, and he's speaking on Rogan, and he's talking about the hero's arc. There's the way things are, which are not good, and then there's the challenge, and then there's an arc, and then eventually he defeats a dragon, and he wins. And that then makes me think of Sopranos and Chris Moltisanti, and he had this. I remember when he's down in the dumps for like the 30th time, he's speaking to Paulie Walnuts, and he's like, "Where's my arc? I don't have an arc." And his whole like story in Sopranos is he's trying to become a mob boss, and he becomes a mob boss, and he gets nothing. He's treated like shit. And I think so many people in life, in real life, don't have an arc. They're plateauing, or maybe they've never really done anything big, and it's weird to think because I felt exactly that way when I was young, and even when I found some success in entrepreneurship with small e-commerce businesses, I'm an entrepreneur. I've made it now, and then kind of life just plateaued. Nothing really happened. I didn't feel like I was going anywhere. And then the more I believed I was the hero of my own story, the hero of my own journey,
Mm.
the more I told myself that story. And I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't know if I believe that much in manifesting and stuff like that. I believe a lot more in taking action. But at the end of the day, if you don't believe you can be something, or at least have the potential to be something, it's definitely not going to happen if you don't believe that. You're not going to, waltz into, awesome goals. Like I have a friend back in Australia, and he goes to me. He's like, I was losing a bunch of weight for something for a marathon 2, 3 years ago. He's like, bro, I wouldn't want to be that. I wouldn't want to be 10% body fat, you know. And he goes, I don't want to accidentally, just diet and then I lose all my muscle and I'm going to accidentally be 10% body fat. I'm like, bro, don't worry. You don't accidentally become 10% body fat. That's extremely difficult. Like you don't accidentally become a millionaire with a massively cash flowing business. These things take years and years of work, years and years of planning. And if you're not believing in yourself during that process, you're definitely not going to succeed. So might as well, get the odds in your favor and believe in yourself, believe in the possibility of it happening.
100%. There's definitely energy around applying action because, yes, if you tell yourself I can't, you're right. But if you tell yourself I can do this, then you're also right too. So it's just a type of energy
Exactly.
that you give out. And when it comes to, I'm a huge believer in like manifestation. It's just it's been also proven too, like energy is everything and what you give out, and we're surrounded by energy. Um, but it's not just writing things down or saying, I'm going to do this. Like it's literally applying action because a lot of people have a misconception of manifestation and energy. They're just like, oh, or even pray. I'm going to, not to make this
Mm.
religious or anything, but, I have seen instances where people just pray and pray and pray and pray. Oh, I'm praying for a miracle. I'm praying for God to save me. God, save me. No, it's like God, yes, God is there, energy is there, source is there, the energy is around you, but you have to apply the action. Your action needs to match what you're manifesting, what you're praying
Yeah,
for, everything
your
that you write
words and
down.
your actions need to be congruent. And if they're not congruent,
Yeah.
you're just lying to yourself. And I think that's it's one when I do university talks, I say to in Greece and Cyprus, I say like I understand your circumstances might not be good and that it's hard, but to not dream, I don't feel sorry for anyone who can't dream because dreaming is free. When I was broke as a joke, when I was living in my car, I could dream. I still dreamt. It doesn't cost anything. No one can stop me from dreaming. I can dream. That's my world. I can dream about whatever I want to achieve. But for it then to be hard, fair enough. I can empathize with that. But to not dream, no. Everyone can dream. You got to dream. And then if you can just work every single day towards a goal, it's going to happen. In terms, I always think about like, I see some entrepreneurs and I feel like their style of entrepreneurship is sprints. Like they go on these big sprints, like 3 months, I'm going to just build a massive, massive drop shipping business. They make 400K over 3 months and it dies. And then they'll do the same things, 6 months later. And it's these little sprints. That's not my style whatsoever. My style is a slow, methodical grind. And if you look at how I work on a normal day, you'd be like, he barely works. He doesn't work that hard. He's not going crazy. But if you see the consistency I have over 13 years, over my last 13 years of entrepreneurship, you're like, holy shit, that is so much more work, so much more discipline than the sprinting method. And I think that's what I like about this march that I'm going to do across Greece. It's not most ultra marathon runners, they're doing 250K in one hit in like over 24 hours or over 48 hours. No sleep, just the hitting. I can't do that. I can't do that. But I can do 1,200 kilometers over 27 days. I can do 40 to 70K a day, sleep, get my nutrition, still work on my business, do my content stuff every single day for 27 days. And hey, look, I'm going, 1,000 kilometers further.
Yeah, 100%. It's like I always say this, if you're not growing, you're dying. And
100%.
if
I really
you
believe in
allow
that.
yourself, yeah, I believe in that. If you allow your circumstances to determine who you are or dictate your future, then you're just never going to grow. You're never going to get out of that situation. And just to like bring it back to that moment when you were living in your car, talk about that a little bit because I know that
Sure.
at least for me, that's kind of like similar to my story. And when I started my first business venture, being in my early 20s. So, talk a little bit about that. How did that shape you as a person, and how did that impact you in your life?
Okay, so I'll break it into what happened and then how did that shape me because I've never really been asked how did it shape me. I think it's a really really good question. So I was finishing high school. It was like my last few months of high school, and I had my parents Greek immigrant parents, pretty strict, very strict. and they were more like bosses. Like it was very like they're going to work, I'm going to work, I'm going to school. We do our job. You do your job. You do your job. You do your job. It wasn't like the I'd go to my white friends' houses and everyone's like, "How was your day?" I'm like, "What the fuck? What? Why is anyone asking everyone how their day is?" Like, did you do the work? Yeah, I did the work. All right, go to your bedroom. Um, so it was a different household to say the least. But I respect my mother like crazy for how she raised me, and she's the reason I am who I am today. But come my last year of high school, I had my internet businesses, and I thought I was so cool, so successful, and I thought I was going to be a mining engineer during high school. But those last few months, I was making some good money with these internet businesses, Facebook groups that I was then making affiliate sales from, and a marketing agency. And the my house, my home kind of fell apart. And it got to the point where I said to my mama, I can't live anymore. And she said, George, if you don't like it here, leave. And then after a couple of times she said that, one day I packed my bags and some other stuff happened. I packed my bags, I packed all my stuff into my black Mazda 2 and backed it out of the driveway one day when they went to a family event, and I left. And I went to my auntie's house, not too far away. I was there for a night or two, and then lovely lady, really love my auntie, but I overheard her one day just in the kitchen, and she just said to like someone, "Oh, you can come over, but George, you see, I don't want to annoy George." And I felt so much shame that I brought my shit, my dirty laundry, to someone else's house that they can't live their life now. And she would have had no trauma at all for me to stay there at all, but I felt like dirty that I brought all my shit, all my shame, all my mess from my home to someone else's home. So I just would just, and I look, I went to school at like 6 a.m. and left at like 9 p.m. I'm like, let me park it around the corner, put the sun visor up and sleep here. My door at my auntie's place is closed. I can't go back home. So you know what? Let me just rough it out here. And then, uh, in August, I lost my license. So I lost the license to my home, and then I crashed my car. And so things were getting progressively worse. And because my Facebook groups were with students, um, they were doing their exams. Like I was doing my final exams. And so they weren't buying, spring break holidays, which is where I would make my affiliate money from. So I went broke, in other words. And I'm there eating tuna cans in this car, which smelled disgusting. It smelled like body odor and sweat and tuna. It was disgusting. It was a revolting situation. And um, and then what was worse was I couldn't open my driver door from the inside. So I'd wake up, I'd be at a petrol station, I'd roll the window down, get out through the window, open the door from the outside, close the window, turn the car off, and then leave. It was just, it was a ridiculous situation. But I dug myself out of that hole. I sold the car. Eventually, I got the business back on track. I sold the business. I finished my exams, although I didn't do very well. Um, and to the second part of the question, how did that shape me? It made me, even maybe in the last, even still probably, to be honest, I always had this like survival instinct. Even if I had money anxiety. I had anxiety in general, but money anxiety like crazy up until last year, basically Q1 last year. And even though I'm financially stable now, it's very hard to like get rid of that. Like, to be honest, my friends always make fun of me that I never really dress up or buy shit. Like I've been wearing the same black $10 black Zara slim fit medium t-shirt since forever, since I was 18, basically, since I left high school. Because I'm like, I'm a young dude. I'm going to destroy all my clothes. Like, it's going to last 3 months, and it's just easy. So I just got like 20 shirts, and my friend's like, dude, but you can just buy good clothes. And sometimes I do like a nice, shirt or two, but I'm like, I don't want to waste money. I don't want to waste money because, the day may come again where I'm back on the streets, and I don't want to look back and say, why did you buy a 10 grand Cartier watch and now you got nowhere to fucking live? Like I couldn't, that scares the shit out of me. So that survival mentality, scares me a lot still. So that's a big thing that shaped me. But also like no one helped. right? And even today, it was a weird day today because my cousin got married today back in Australia. I know my family's there and everything. And they're like, oh, how's George? They're all asking, how's George for my mum? My mum's letting me know. And I'm sitting there thinking, I left Australia in 2018 and I wrote a list of all the people I thought were going to keep in touch with me. I wrote a list of 30 people, friends from high school, friends from primary school, Greek friends, family friends, etc. Three people now have kept in touch with me from that list of 30, right? And it's the same people I could speak to, or I did eventually speak to during that first time of crisis, right? And I think that first crisis of mine, and I had a couple others since then, just showed me that no one gives a fuck about you. like, maybe I'm a bit sexist in saying this, but I probably believe this about 95%. For young men, the world really doesn't give a shit about us. Like, I so easily fell through the cracks. I had a good Greek family. I went to a good school. I had friend groups. And like that, I vanished from the southern hemisphere, from the country I'm from the communities I'm from. I didn't get a phone call, a text, nothing. Years went by, and now 2018, that's 6 years went by, and people who I thought were really close friends, not a call. I would call them, they don't pick up, and it was such a good lesson. Is my point, because you realize, and these people maybe they get into their 30s and 40s, they realize this, that people don't give a shit about you. You got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of your family, and you have to maintain relationships. But there are circumstantial friends. Oh, we happen to go to the same school, or we happen to be at the same job, or we happen to go to the same college. And there's people who are really your friends. And I very luckily got the shock treatment of, in like 1 year, all the frivolous and circumstantial friends evaporated, which was a great favor. And I mean, the most of my adult life and even my childhood felt very lonely in that capacity. But like my mum says, you can be alone but not be lonely, right? And I think for a long part of my loneliness, I did feel lonely. But I
Hmm.
mean, the last 5 years, I haven't felt alone, and I think, and it's this weird dynamic now with this whole digital nomad craze and so on, where people are traveling and, your friend group isn't around the corner, it's not down the street. We can go to the football pitch or the pub and they're there. But I have like two or three solid friends here in Athens, and this is kind of like one of my home bases. Back in Cyprus, one or two. In Barcelona, three or four. In New York, maybe three or four as well. But like, we'll see each other once or twice a year. And that's a very weird dynamic. Like, it's completely against the last, I don't know, 50 million years of evolution, where it's like, you live together, you live nearby. And so now we're like, oh no, our friends are, you see them once a year. Um, but getting good at being productive during lonely periods, getting good at being uh, upbeat and not feeling down and maintaining the relationships. Like, I have in my calendar almost every single Tuesday for the last 8 years, I've called my mate Christos every Tuesday. He has a day off work. I give him a call, right? And every other Thursday, I'll call my friend Edward, call my friend Jared at least once a month, call my mentor Rowan at least once a month. And I put in the effort, I put in the work, and they do too, because we're actually friends. We're more like family. Um, and that's a big thing that shaped that first crisis of mine shaped me in realizing who is really there for you, who really cares, who doesn't care. But at the end of the day, you also, I'm an aggressive dude. I know that. But I realize, like, you can't hate people for, taking care of themselves. That's the way life goes. And as a young man, you can't ask for things from anybody. You can't have any expectations. Actually, you are the one who should be the expectation for others. You need to take responsibility to help others. Um,
Hmm.
and there's a period where you're like, I don't want to accept all this responsibility. I don't know if I can take it. And then another part of you like is, I want responsibility. I want to have a business. I want to, employ people. I want to give value to people in business. And then at some point now I'm like, okay, I've built this business. It's doing pretty well. I'm like, what else can I do? Can I make, an Instagram sharing history videos about Greek history? Maybe I can add value that way. Boom. Okay, that worked. Great. Maybe entrepreneurship videos. Boom. I can help that way. Maybe, walk across the country, raise money for a charity. Boom. I can help that way. So like now I'm at this aggressive responsibility taking place instead of asking fathers to take responsibility of me. So I think that this crisis and the other crises that happened in my life really put me in this mentality of you got to give, you got to help others, in a weird way, right?
Yeah, no. And to kind of piggyback of what you were saying about people not caring about you, it it's in the sense of the way that I see this, and people can see this differently, is you get to a point in your life where you outgrow people. That's ultimately what it
That's true.
comes down to. You were in such a very tough time in your life, and you were growing your business. As how old are you? Were you in high school, right? You were a senior in high
Yeah,
school. Were you like
17,
18?
17. Yeah,
Especially at that age where you're still you're still maturing, you're still like trying to figure out like where you want to go in life. Do you want to go to college? Like what is going to be your career? And you're thinking outside of the box. You're like, no, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to build my own business. I'm not following the school system. And that can be like weird to people because
yeah.
entrepreneurship, stepping outside of the box and just being a unique human being is like not being in that rat race. That's weird to people. It's like, oh, what are you
I
doing?
think it's insulting for them too. I think a lot of
Yeah.
them find it insulting because like, and I say this a lot about Greek men. I mean, unemployment here is like always been at record, much higher than the rest of the EU, and generally it's been like one of the biggest headlines in the last 15, no, 20 years, basically. And young Greek men, what we do in Greece is every single day we'll complain that we don't have job opportunities. Then we'll sit at a table at a cafe every day, have our coffee and cigarettes, and just talk shit for like 10 hours, just bullshitting for 10 hours. Now, I've been in those. I have my Greek friends in Sydney. I remember in high school being like, we're sitting there at lunchtime, whatever, we're having our lunch, and I come up, I have these ideas. I'm like, we should do this together, blah blah blah. And they look at me like, and and they all came from
Like,
rich
oh,
families,
that's
so I
not
get it.
cool. Yeah.
It's like they always call me a tryhard, and in my mentality, I worked at McDonald's during high school. These guys drove their Lexuses, fucking Range Rovers. I had my piece of shit Mazda 2 that I had to buy with my own money. My parents didn't buy it for me. And I'm thinking, part of me was like, oh, maybe I am a tryhard, okay. But part of me was like, you know what? Fuck you. Like, I'm here trying hard. Yeah, kill me, sue me. I'm trying hard. I don't have a
Yeah.
safety net of a couple $1 million from my parents. I ain't wrong. Like, if I'm a
Yeah.
tryhard, fuck, like, okay, I'm a tryhard. And I think they find it insulting and they shoot it down when they hear about it because they're like, wait a second, you don't like the situation that we're in? You're saying that I should do something too. And I'd be like, yeah, you fucking should. I think everyone should do something. They should be taking action. They should be building something. If your thing is that you want to become an engineer, okay, double down on that. When I wanted to be a mining engineer when I was in high school, I went to the universities that I wanted to go to. I said, do you have any like materials I can read? They're like, well, you can read about this, read about that. Here's 3 or 4 mining engineers that you can go talk to. I went and did an internship with them. They had like an excursion to go to the mines in Australia. I went on a mining excursion. Like I doubled down. I went deep into it. But hey, I'm being a try hard when I do that. And I'm so beyond the point of not wanting to insult people because early in my life, I was like, oh, maybe I'm wrong. But you get to a point when you've proven yourself and you have a stack of undeniable evidence that you are who you say you are. You're like, I know I'm right. I know why you're insulted. And now I don't care anymore about
Yeah.
your opinion in this matter because you're not qualified in this realm. Now, you know, there's a way to deal. Like my mother, when I said to her, I want to start a marketing, she's like, who are you? You're nobody. Why would anyone want to be a client? And now I'm like, okay, did that hurt? Yeah, it hurt. Like, ouch.
Absolutely.
But I'm like, I can understand why she's saying that because she wants the best for me. And this is a crazy idea since I was like 13, 14 as well. But I've also, some people you need to prove it to them too. Like over time, my mom went from like, no, don't do it with my crazy ideas too. Maybe the second phase of her believing in me was, for example, and this was another, great example of this topic was my Hungarian ex-girlfriend. I said to her in 2019, I was like, I want to run a marathon. And I was no runner. I was no athlete back then. I'd never run a marathon in my life. I hadn't trained at all. I said, hey, I want to run the Barcelona marathon. She's like, you can't do that. I was like, all right.
Mm.
Now I'm going to do it, and I'm going to hate you while I do it. I didn't say that, but in my head, I was like, oh, I'm going to be so happy I'm going to think about her when I cross the finish line. Now, when I told my mom I want to run the Barcelona marathon, she didn't say, no, you can't do it. Who are you to do it? She said, how? I was like, okay, I'm going to train 3-4 times a week. I'm going to change my diet. I'm going to read books, blah, 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 blah. And now, when I went to when we had a holiday in Money this year, this place in Greece, I said to her, "How crazy would it be if I walked the entire distance of Greece on foot?" She goes, "George, I believe you can do anything. Like there's these three phases of belief, and some people will stick with you during this journey, and some people won't. Like all those people who dropped off contact with me, and now, yeah, they pop up. They pop up every now and then. They'll call. They'll give me a call. They'll give me a text. A decade later, good to see you succeeding. I'm all right. And look, for me,
Mm.
my biggest I don't regret it, but the biggest thing that I think was an unnecessary pain for me was anger. I was so angry, most of my last 13 years at people who didn't believe me, people who didn't give me a shot, people who I thought, maybe owed me something because of things my grandfather did for them, uh, whatever I felt it was. And or they'd wronged me, or they'd wronged my family, or they spread rumors about me that were ridiculous. And a lot of the time I used, not a lot of the time, all the time I used that anger to fuel my work ethic. And only in the last like 2 years, last year, Q1, Q2, I did some really good therapy. I got a professional therapist to go through everything. And by the end of it, I thought I was like, oh, I'm cured. And I only
Mhm.
in a 21-kilometer race, a Spartan race this year, when it's the hardest thing I'd ever done, I was running it. And usually when I run, I'm listening to the most like fucking intense hardcore rap and like heavy metal. I'm just super angry. I've got all these things that people said to me. I'm like, oh, I'm so angry. I was at peace. I was not drawing from anger at all to fuel my work ethic. I was drawing from inspiration. Imagine if you could do this, George. How great would that be? How great would you feel? How accomplished would you feel? Look around. It was in the Pyrenees in Andorra. I was like, look around. This is an amazing experience. How great is this? And I finished that race. I was like, I feel great mentally, physically. Like I'm exhausted, but like I feel great. And only after that I realized, oh, I didn't have a single negative thought during this whole process. And I think that's the hardest thing because I can only speak for young men, but I see this a lot for young men where we get so angry with the way things are for us and we fuel our work ethic with that. And there's a lot of that like toxic masculinity. That's what I would call toxic masculinity when we're like, fuck women, men going their own way. We just need to hit the Sigma grind set, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, a lot of that anger, I think, is directed actually at ourselves and at our inability to be
100%.
disciplined and so on. And we put that on others. I was smart enough to not say anything to anyone. I didn't, spout hate to anyone or anger to anyone. I just shut my mouth and left. What do you call it? Abandonment. What was it? Abandonment
Fear of
disorder.
abandonment?
Yeah. So I'm just like, oh, I'm just going to leave before people leave me. If they don't like my
Mm.
ideas or they don't like who I am, I'm leaving. And I literally left the country I'm from and never went back. But now I realize, you know what? It was always me not being okay with my own self worth. And only when I did become okay with my own self worth did I realize like they were never the problem. They were just like, you know, a reflection of how I felt about myself, to be honest. And funnily enough, do have people wronged me? Yeah, 100%. Do I hold any resentment? Nah, I'm so at peace with it. Like, it makes it easier that they're on the other side of the world, but like, I don't hold any anger. What's done is done. I'm living
Yeah.
my own life, and there's so much good that I can do for the world. It's so exciting. I can just focus on that.
All right, guys, we'll get right back into the episode. I just wanted to take a quick break here to share with you guys that I do not make any money on this podcast. My goal and my purpose with Inherent Success is to be that guide for individuals in their self-discovery journey. So if you found any value in this episode, make sure to like, to subscribe, and if you know anyone that could benefit from the episode or the podcast overall, you can share with a friend as well. Now, let's get back into it. Yeah, we need to go through things. We definitely need to have a lot of experiences in life in order for us to, one, it builds character, and we need those experiences to learn and grow as an individual. And honestly, anger can be a good thing. It can be used in a good way. It can be turned into passion, and you can channel that anger into creativity, just like how you said you were running and you were angry, but in a good way. You were very passionate, you were very
Yeah,
motivated, you were very inspired to finish that race instead of just like, oh, like screw everyone or like F this person or whatever. But you can literally channel anger into creativity, and that's something that I had to learn myself because, like I'm Hispanic. I grew up in a very aggressive home. It was very interesting that you said that in the beginning, that our house, we didn't express our feelings. It was just like, what are you doing? It wasn't like, oh, hello, good morning, everyone. Let's have breakfast together. It's like, no, everyone does their
yeah,
own thing. Like that's how our
yeah,
culture is. And, me and Jonathan, Jonathan was raised American, but his family, his dad is from Greece. But when he used to go to Greece every summer, and that environment was everyone's just loud and all these things, and that's how my environment was too. Everyone's really loud, everyone's really aggressive. So I'm definitely not used to that. But you can, like, I did have a lot of anger built up as I was growing up because of my upbringing, but now I learned to channel my anger into creativity. And just to also piggyback what you were saying when it comes to people judging you. And honestly, when people judge you, it's just a justification of them not being able to do the work. Like they're not able to do what you want to do. So they want to judge you and project all of their crap and insecurities and what they're not able to do on you. So whenever someone like doesn't support me in whatever I'm doing, or if someone criticizes me or like, oh no, you can't do that, just like how your mom said, oh, you can't do that, come on, like settle down. It's mostly because like anything that's outrageous and anything that requires like expansion and getting out of your comfort zone, people are
yeah,
like, oh, what are you doing? That's not going to work. You're
yeah.
crazy. But it's because they're not willing to do it themselves. Yeah.
100%. And it's funny because only halfway through this year, I started to make content on Instagram consistently. And although all my friends now are entrepreneurs, uh, like my main business, what I've done for 13 years was e-commerce brokers, helping people buy and sell businesses. And of course, I'm still doing that. I'll probably do that for the rest of my life. And when I started to make this content about entrepreneurship, content about history, big passion of mine, people like these entrepreneurs, open-minded people, they're like, what are you doing? What's this got to do with that? And I'm like, it ain't got to do with it. I like it. I'm starting a new media business. They're like, all right. And it was to be honest, I was thinking about this the other day. A friend of mine who is a client and a referrer to e-commerce brokers, Joel Kaplan, he's the SMMA king of the internet. He said to me when I visited him in Denver, he's like, dude, if you like, I also do stand-up comedy. He's like, dude, don't keep it separate. Don't hide it, which I did. He's like, bring all the stand up, bring your funniness, bring your history, nerdiness, all into your one brand. And people are going to love you for it. I'm like, I don't know, dog. I don't know. And I followed his lead. I did exactly what he said. And I can't believe all the good things that have happened from it. Like, in so many ways, it's blowing my mind. Like, one, I made my podcast Gringlish. I only started. I'm up to like 10 episodes. I started halfway through the year. I made the first episode and I said, you know what? I'm going to talk about whatever the fuck I want. And I wanted to rank Roman emperors, in a tier list. Super nerdy shit. And I did it, and I made one reel from this hour-long podcast. That reel, and I never had a reel or an Instagram video or a YouTube video get more than like 1,000, 2,000 views. This stupid video of me being dramatic about a certain Roman emperor got like 150,000 views. I'm like, what the fuck?
Wow.
There are other people who like this, and there are people in the comments who are like specifically saying super nerdy history stuff about it, and I'm engaging conversation. I'm like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. And like, there's that history piece there. So I'm meeting other people in the world who are as dramatically interested in in what I'm interested in. And then the second thing too is, this is a weird one for you. In the past 3 to 4 months that I've been doing this content stuff, so many women who I would date have reached out to me or contacted me about this nerdy history or nerdy entrepreneurship stuff. And I'm like, and like, they're like, let's get a coffee. I'm like, what? And I already know that one, they like history. Two, they like business stuff. They like to look at me since they've seen me. They've seen me talk about bullshit on the internet. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that is such a better way to meet someone than Tinder. Right. So in the last 3, 4 months, I'm like, I'm deleting Tinder. Fuck that. Like, why would I go on this toxic platform that's firstly putting me at a disadvantage because I'm one of a billion
Yeah.
dudes that Tinder's 84% men. And then it's like, no, I'm just going to be ridiculously myself. And if someone likes it, cool. And it's only been like 3 or 4 girls who've kind of like talked to me. I'm like, that's so much better and so much higher, more vetted than Tinder. So like there's all these, and then of course business opportunities and all this other stuff. But I'm just like, holy shit, being yourself does work, right? But it's taken me
Hell yeah.
13 years to double down completely on who I am. And I love history more than I love business. And I really love business. And it's taken me 26 years to say, you know what, I'm going to be public. I'm going to come out about my history nerdiness. But it's like, fuck, it's working now. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's weird that even my entrepreneur friends who are open-minded people, that they were even like, dude, what are you doing? The same thing that my high school friends like, dude, what are you doing? But I think consistent, because I realized like last year, I'm making good money for my business. This could be the rest of my life. As it stands, this is the rest of my life. I'm going to be the e-commerce broker for the rest of my life. I can make some good money. I can buy an apartment every other year. Okay, fine. But I'm like, this takes up an hour or two of my day every day. I got a bunch of other hours to be filling, and I can't. There's only so many historical sites I can visit. There's only so many coffee shops I can work at to say that I'm traveling. I'm just like, I got to do something, and uh, taking on a new challenge, taking on a bunch of work. Like it's been so much work to like after that first video of that Roman emperor went relatively viral. I was like, I should make a video of a Roman emperor every single day. And that's 182 Roman emperors, right? That's 6 months of videos every day, which is a ridiculous amount of filming, a ridiculous amount of editing and research and scripting. But I've enjoyed it. It's hard, but I've enjoyed it. And the resistance I had to doing really consistent content like that, I was like, I got to hit that resistance. I got it. Like there's this book by Stephen Pressfield, I think it's called, I don't know, I can't remember. But I'm just like, he really talks about wherever you feel resistance in your life, that's where you got to go.
That's where you
The
gotta
same
go.
thing
Yeah.
with stand-up comedy for me. Like stand-up comedy, I always love stand-up comedy. Like anytime I was depressed or had anxiety or was having, when I had the blues, let's say, I would just chuck up some Dave Chappelle, some Louis C.K., and I'd laugh my ass off, even though I'd seen it a billion times. And one day in 2021, when I burnt out, lowest point of my life, I was like, I should give this a crack. Like it took me being burnt out completely to be like, let me try stand up. And so many times since 2021, I feel like I'm not good at this. Like you have sometimes I come off stage, I'm like, holy shit, that was torture. When you just suck so much, no one laughs. People are talking, they're on their phone. One time I was performing, a lady was like this in the front row. I'm like, oh my God, I put this lady to sleep. I'm terrible. And you have these days, and I would take like 3 to 6 months off stand up at a time. And I'm like, maybe it was just one of those little ideas, one of those little businesses that just didn't work out, and you leave it there. And when people ask, how's a comedy thing? You say, I didn't do it. But then I come back to it, I'm re-inspired to do it. And it's just that consistency. Like even here in Athens, I'm performing once or twice a week. Now on the 11th of October, I have my first show that I'm producing, that I'm emceeing, that I'm hosting. Um, and it's just that thing. It's like, it's also just a lot of work. It's also uh, pushing yourself into that resistance. Like I had so much resistance doing comedy. Like I wasn't like this extroverted, loud dude that I am now. When I was young, I was pretty introverted. And I remember that one of the first times I went to speak, I had to speak in front of the class in English class in high school, and only in front of like 15, 20 people. And I'm reading some poem, and I would stutter every now and then. Not too bad, but I like, I'm a bit dyslexic, and like just reading shit, sometimes I'm just like, it's really bad. And from that to doing like talks in front of 400 people, stand up, in front of a couple hundred people. And not because it's easy. And I'll still stutter and fumble words. Anyone who knows me or has seen any of my content, they're like, this guy fumbles his words every now and then. I can't really understand what he says sometimes. But I'm just like, sometimes people laugh. So I'll just keep doing it. Some people like the content, so I'll just keep taking a swing at it, and slowly I'll improve.
I think what people make complicated is the authenticity part and just like being yourself. And like when it comes to creating content or like starting your own business or anything in that nature, most people don't start because they have this belief of what are people going to think of me? What if I show up this way and not myself? Maybe people will
Yeah.
like me this way. And it's not that. It's just, it's better to be loved and liked for who you are than loved and liked for who you're not. Because when you're authentic, you find your people, first of all. And when
Yeah.
you put yourself out there and you put the reps in and you keep going, like with your comedy, you just keep, even with business, when you keep going and going and going and going, eventually you become so like immune to it. You become great at it, and you master the craft. But a lot of people are not willing to go through that resistance, to go through to the thing that makes them feel uncomfortable. I always say, if it scares the shit out of you, that's what you got to do. That's what you got
100%.
to do. You can't sit back. You can't be afraid, because if you're just always trying to stay in a little safe box in the corner and always rely on what's safe and what's secure, you're never going to grow. You're never going to
Yeah.
wonder, you're
Yeah.
never going to figure
100%.
out, like, you're never going to know what you're capable of. You're never going to be able to launch that business or go on that stage and sing, do comedy, whatever you desire, your desires are and your dreams are. You're never going to get there if you stay in your comfort zone. It sounds so
100%.
ABC 1, 2, 3, but it's so simple. But a lot of people just don't get that.
Yeah, and I remember the first 2, 3 years, and maybe it was this year where I really didn't have this feeling anymore. But like I remember when, like, to get a comedy spot like 5 to 15 minutes in Barcelona in English is quite hard. There's not that many spots. So they'll post, hey, there's a show. Do you want a slot? And I'm like, yes. You have to grab it. You have to be quick with it. So it's like it's a rare thing to grab it.
Yeah.
And you grab it. You write your set. I practice in the mirror. I record myself and like all this stuff. I record my jokes. I'm prepared. And then I get there, I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll just go home. They don't see me, they're not going to call me up. As soon before I go on stage, I'm, oh shit. Like just before you go on stage, just as they call your name, you get those butterflies in your stomach. You're like, oh shit, oh shit. I get the sweats. I always wear black shirts when I do comedy because I get the sweats. I'm sweating like crazy. And I immediately feel like I need to pee. I'm like, I just pee. I don't need to pee. And I'm like, oh fuck. And then I get on stage. I'm like, I always like 100 times. I always remember the first 3 words I'm going to say when I go on stage. And with my friends, it's a bit of a meme, inside joke in our friend group, because I would always start one of my bits with, uh, "I'm Greek." What's the thing? It's like, I'm Greek Australian. That's why I look like this, but I sound like this. And I'm like, okay, I know that's the first line. And I know I can roll off that, but I would get so nervous before. I'm like, maybe I just run home. I don't know. But like,
Yeah.
after a while, I'm just so desensitized, and you just hit it, and some, and like the crazy thing is with comedy, even the best in the world, like Louis C.K. had this story. When he went to Australia recently, he performed in some shithole, and no one laughed at any of his stuff. They didn't know who he was. They didn't laugh. And like with killer material that in Madison Square Garden, 20, 30, 40,000 people are laughing their ass off. He got a Netflix special for this bloody thing. He's had a TV show and people aren't laughing like that. And then some 15-year-old kid will come on stage, say some ass jokes and they love him. Like it's just such a fickle thing sometimes, but having the, uh, wherewithal, having the persistence to be like, it was just a show. Maybe I wasn't in the right mood. Maybe it wasn't the right material. Maybe I should have said that other story that they could have related to more. Um, but it's at the end of the day, even the creative stuff. People, I think people expect with creativity that it's going to be so much fun all the time. And I'm like, I don't have that. I had none of that expectations at all. I was very much of the immigrant mentality that you go to work, you get the money, you go home. We didn't ask you about your day. We didn't say if it's your passion, do you love this? I don't give a fuck. I got paid, I can pay for rent and some food. But eventually, and I'm lucky I have this privilege that I could go do comedy because, I was taking care money wise, even though when I started, I had no money and nothing was working. I was just like, okay, give this a crack, see if it works, and keep doing it. Because the thing that works in comedy is you have to write all the time. If you aren't writing, you can't perform. And even like today, I wrote some, like even I haven't performed in maybe 2 weeks now, just because I've been training for this Ironman. And today I wrote some stupid joke. I just wrote it down, and it's just a discipline of thinking about it, writing it down, mulling it over, writing it out, and then performing it. It's a job. At the end of the day, work is work, and even I think the best artists in any field are really hard workers. I think the thing that they do really well is pretend like it's like, yeah, I just did this, super easy. It's like, dude, you're a hard worker. Don't tell me you don't work hard. Don't give me that lie. You work hard, dude.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, 100%. I really love how you're such a great example of just really pushing yourself to limits. And it's like we all have the capacity to work to the max of our ability because there's never just one thing and there's never just one destination. There's always more. It's like, okay, I climbed up this mountain. Let me see what other mountains I can climb, you know?
yeah,
And yeah, and
100%.
it's gonna be messy, it'll be clunky, it'll be challenging, but it's so worth the view. Because what people don't understand, I did hear this on another podcast too, is that a lot of people see the success, but they don't see like what you had to do to get there. And it's like people want the view, but they're not willing to do the climb.
Yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah.
saw that with my first interview on TV in Greece went viral randomly on YouTube. And like I left Australia, I came to Greece, and I lived in the worst suburb of the country, the most dangerous suburb, kidnappings every other day. If you looked up the suburb on the internet, like Agios Pandolimanas or Victoria, Athens, it would just be kidnapping, kidnapping, shooting, kidnapping. Even though I really didn't have any problem, probably because I look like how I look like. But like I went from being poor in Australia to being poor in Greece, which is far worse, right? And from there, I started again and started from scratch. And it was just a process of, yeah, for me, it was just a process of going from knowing that, okay, I've done one or two things. I've exceeded my expectations in some capacity in the past. Maybe I can do it again. And to be honest, like that's always the thing that most excites me. You mentioned like the view from the mountain top, and I think people get so caught up in the challenge of climbing, they don't think about the glory, like the glory of the view. And I always was delusional enough to believe in the glory of the mountain, the view of the mountaintop. And I look back at the last like 13 years or the last 12 years from last year, I look back, I was like, was this whole entrepreneurship scheme worth it? Worth it? As in the price I paid for it? Definitely not. Like it wasn't worth it. But some things in life you have to overpay for. And I really believe in that. Like some things aren't worth it. Like how much time and effort you put into sometimes relationships, you're like, that wasn't worth it. But am I happy it happened? Yeah, sure. And like entrepreneurship for me wasn't this thing. I mean, I know so many entrepreneurs who are so talented, or maybe they had some connections or some startup money, and you're like, this guy just touches a business and it succeeds. He's like got the Midas touch. And then for me, I'm like banging my head against the wall for a decade. And now I find success. It's like I completely overpay for that. But some things you got to overpay for. And the only reason I think I survived for so long is because I didn't think about it logically. I was delusional. I'm like, I can keep doing this. There was no point in my thing was like, well, in my entrepreneurial career was where I said, if this doesn't work out in the next 3 months, I'm going to find a job. It's like, this is going to work out or I'm going to die. Right. Like for me, I was obsessed
Right.
with Get Rich or Die Trying by 50 Cent. Cause I'm like, I'm going to get rich or die trying because that's it. There's no other option for me.
Right. Right. And you have to go through those moments. I truly believe that everyone's journey is completely different because imagine if your journey was just going straight up. I think those kind of stories are really boring because, yeah, people may have major success in the beginning or quick and fast success, but how are you really learning? Yeah, you may have some little things that you're learning from, but at the end of the day, your story is your story and that's your journey. And you having all of those downfalls and just like really banging your head against the wall and just like having those tough moments, it builds character and it's made you who you are today. So that's definitely something to like, I mean, for me, shit, I wear my story and my journey with a badge of honor because imagine if everything was spoon fed to me. That's how I see it. If I had a beautiful family and everything was given to me and like my parents helped me, build my business, I would have never been who I am today. So definitely, and those for you guys that are listening, if you're going through something, even watching as well, if you're currently building something and you're just constantly hitting the wall, just don't give up. Just keep going. This is part of your story, and failure is never final. The only time you truly fail is if you quit on yourself. I believe that 100%. Yeah.
100%. And the funny thing for me is I don't know. I remember in high school, I used to have I would always put motivational quotes and stuff as my background pictures on my computer or my phone. And my friends would make fun of me. They're like, bro, that's so gay. I'm like, this, you think this is bad? They're like, yeah. I'm like, I'm trying to inspire myself. And like, I remember, maybe a few years ago in 2021, I would watch, Joey Diaz, this famous, comedian. He was a degenerate loser for a good 40, 50 years of his life. And then he got his life together and doubled down on comedy and became successful. And there's this podcast series, it's about 11 episodes, about 2 to 3 hours each of his whole story. And when I was down in the dumps, I would just listen. I would fall to sleep to him telling his story because it's just a story of resilience, of just perseverance, even though
Mm.
he was his biggest enemy. And for me, it's like, I realized like no one or very few people would see this podcast or see this YouTube video and take meaning from it. And a lot of people like that dude who called me gay for some reason because I'm trying to get inspired by something. It's like, you now, is immensely valuable to me. To you, it's not valuable. Okay, that's your loss, man. And for me, like I'm still I'm so easily inspired. Like almost every time I'm about to do a big like run or triathlon or something, I'll listen to this like YouTube watch later series, all these videos I've saved, and it's like Eric Thomas yelling motivational shit, and I get inspired. Like I don't feel ashamed that I get inspired by stuff, and for me, it's always the stories of the underdog. And I think to add to your point, it's like people who I've researched or met and I hear their story and they're ridiculously resilient time and time again, they've come back. Those are the people I really become quite good friends with or are really inspired by. I don't really get inspired by the other people. Like in the Greek world, 95% of rich Greeks had billionaire fathers in shipping. We don't, in Greece, it's 95% Greek billionaire fathers who are in shipping. All they know is shipping. And so
Mm.
the generation that's alive now, their family was rich and now they're rich. I'm not inspired, dog. And I don't want to hear your advice because it's not relevant to me. Well, this is how you should do a
Right.
business. I don't have $1 billion, man. So what are you talking? They're like, well, I invested smartly. Well, I got nothing to invest. I remember back in the day, my friends were like, you should invest in crypto. I'm like, I have no money. What the fuck am I supposed to do with this advice? So it's like the people I really get along with, the people I really feel connected to are people who have struggled. And because they can understand where I'm coming from. And I think, and this is maybe a bit of a problem. I don't know. I haven't thought about it enough. In my relationships, if I meet a woman who hasn't struggled in her life, I find it quite difficult to have a real connection because I'm like, you don't understand me. You don't get me. It's the same with my friends. I'm like, if a
100%.
dude has just had everything given to him, I find it hard to get along. I have one or two friends that have had a pretty decent life and we'll get along. And those are the exceptions. But most of my friends, they've gone through a lot of shit and we vibe a lot off that. And to be honest, I look at the comedians even who have had hard times, they've got the best fucking stories. I'm here, like, I realize my gift in this world is I've always been good at sales because I'm a storyteller. I am a storyteller. Whether I'm telling stories on Instagram of others, whether I'm telling my story, whether I'm telling stories in comedy world, whether I'm telling a story of the sale of a business, like I tell stories, and it's captivating sometimes, apparently, or funny sometimes, or inspiring sometimes. I'm like, well, that's what I got to do. So if it's helping others, great, I can give back because other people's stories help me.
100%. Transformational stories. That's what this podcast is all about. And I love that. I love your mindset because that's also like what I'm creating too with this podcast and slowly getting into public speaking too is just sharing the stories because everyone has a story and you never know whose story can make an impact in someone's life because maybe someone that's listening to this is probably living in their car, and I was homeless at one point in my life too when I was 22, and I was listening to YouTubes, and I don't think podcasts came out at that time. This is back in 2012, so I don't think podcasting was not a thing. It was just YouTube and Facebook. So I would go on YouTube and I would just like listen to a lot of motivational things and stories. And that's what really like impacted me and inspired me, because stories are just so powerful because how that person went from being broke, went from a broken childhood or like a broken person to who they are today. It's so impactful and it's so amazing. So and I love everything that you're creating. I love that you're in comedy. I didn't know that. And then just to kind of like, I would love to hear a little bit more about what you do. I know you're an e-commerce broker. You've been on the Greek Herald and you've been named in Forbes 30 under 30, which is amazing in Greece. So I would love for you to share like your journey through your success and what would be a really good advice for young people, especially in their 20s. Because a lot of people are just in their 20s, like still figuring themselves out, even starting businesses. So, what would be like your best advice as far as success and what it takes to be successful?
Yeah, so my journey in entrepreneurship was always on the internet. My thing, I always say this, but like I love the internet. Like a lot of people, as much as I'm Greek or I'm Australian or in many senses American, because I grew up in American culture, the internet, TV, like that's American culture and business. But my culture is the internet. I grew up on the internet playing video games, looking at memes. Like I didn't really watch TV growing up. I watched YouTube. Like I'm the generation of just YouTube and memes, basically. Um, and for me, I got into affiliate marketing through Facebook groups, and then I started to buy and sell domains, and then I started a digital product business. I started marketing agency, a physical product business, and some of them were successful, and I sold. Some of them were duds and failed. And eventually, I just got good at buying and selling online businesses for myself and then for others. And that's what e-commerce brokers is today. We help people buy and sell millions of dollars worth of online businesses every year now. Um, and my advice to people in their 20s would be it's okay to tell people who don't believe in you or yourself, like, fuck it. Like, fuck them. Like, so much of my, what has worked for me was someone saying I can't and saying fuck them. Or just looking at my odds of success and saying fuck it. And I feel like not enough people say you need to go against the curb. Like if you don't want to be like others, you're gonna have to do something that others don't do. It's as simple as that. And a lot of like what I said, what drove me was anger. And maybe that isn't the best fuel, but maybe it works regardless. Maybe it's diesel and we want to help the planet. Maybe we should be electric. But if it works, it works. If it gets you there, um, I think sometimes you got to say fuck it. You got to say fuck them, and you got to just go for it. Even if the odds are ridiculously stacked against you, good, fantastic. Don't need it to make sense. Like this, I'm training for a triathlon in about 25 days, and then I'm gonna, which is like crazy cardio. I've never been an athlete in my life. Never necessarily good at any sport, and then I'm gonna like march and walk and run across the country. Mind you, I'm like 5 foot nothing. My legs, I'm like 95% torso. My legs are super short. I'm not a runner. Like I shouldn't be running. But my whole love with running came from this fucking mentality. When I was playing rugby, kind of like NFL in Australia, I was a prop, which is basically the guy who takes the ball, smashes some people, and then passes it off because he can't run. And my coach would be like, "Don't run, George. You can't run." I'm like, okay, well, now I have to run. Fuck you. I'm going to run. Fuck, like when people say I can't start a business, fuck that. I'm going to start a business. I dated a girl here in Athens a few years ago, and it was like the second or third day. And I said, I want to start making YouTube videos. And she's like, "That's a terrible idea." I'm like, fuck that. I'm going to do it anyway. Now I'm definitely going to do it. When my girlfriend's like, "You can't run a marathon," I'm like, I'm definitely running a marathon now. And like, sometimes you got to say fuck it, especially early in your journey when people just don't see you as that person. Maybe you don't see yourself as that person. You got to say fuck it. Let's see what happens, So that would be my advice.
Yeah, definitely not caring what other people think. And like I was saying earlier, people stop themselves in their tracks because they're so fixated on like, what is this person going to think of me? I'm going to look stupid. But it's just like if you continue to think that way, you're never going to go for that thing that you've always wanted to do. And I like that type of motivation because I'm kind of like that too. When someone tells me I can't do it, I'm like, watch me. Watch me
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
I've never really had haters or anyone like hate on me. I've had people, mostly in my family, doubt me because I was very rebellious growing up, very rebellious. Like people were actually worried about me, either if I was going to end up in jail or die. Like that's how bad it was. And when, they were like, I don't know if she's going to do this. Like, what is she going to do with her life? And when I started my first business venture, like people just could kind of like make fun of me. And when I would show up differently, especially in my house and with my siblings, they're like, you're being weird. And I'm just like, I'm not being weird. I'm improving myself. Like, this is how I am. I want to be happy. Like,
Yeah.
what's wrong with that? And now that, we're older and now they understand and they're very proud of me. But before when I started, people were just like, oh, you're so different. You're not the
Yeah.
same. Like, you're a completely different person. I'm like, I don't care. So I love that advice. That is so important. And it sounds so simple, but it's so important not to give a fuck what people think about
Well,
you.
yeah,
Just go for
100%.
it. Yeah.
And I unfortunately had so many haters. People hated me so much, like crazy. And sometimes it was so out of balance, like completely out of check. And like, there were some people who like doubted. Then there were some people who were like, "Oh, you're a try hard." And then some people would just, if I posted a vlog of mine from like 2018, people from high school who weren't even my friends would tag their friends and be like, "Look at this fuckwit." I'm just like, all right, dog. That seems like wildly, mean just because I'm sharing my day. And then some people were like, "You're a bullshit entrepreneur. You're fake." Like, especially with the videos that have come out and articles that have come out in Greece. People like, he's some rich Greek, rich Australian. He comes like he thinks I came here poor. Like I started in the worst suburb, and a lot of the kids who live here live in good suburbs and go to nice universities and have nice families. Like people love to talk shit, especially when you're confident
Hmm.
in yourself. They hate that because they want to be confident themselves. Not they don't hate anything else. I don't really believe. I think they just hate that you're confident in your own two shoes. And after a while,
Hmm.
like you said, you just like now when I get hate, I'm just like, okay, I can't care. But if I
Yeah.
look, it's part like I think that there's a balance to not giving a fuck what people think. If people aren't where you want to be, then they're just not qualified. People don't ask me for medical advice because I'm not a fucking doctor. They don't ask me for legal advice. I'm not an attorney. They ask me for how to buy and sell businesses because that I know better than anyone else in the world. When I wanted to be a successful entrepreneur, I didn't ask accountants. I didn't ask doctors. I didn't ask investment bankers. I asked entrepreneurs. And like, if people who are like, so many people give me advice and they'll DM me like, you should make your videos like this. I'm like, can you show me some evidence of what you're saying having worked in the past? They're like, oh no, it's just an idea. I'm like, okay, thank you. And then personally to myself, I'm like, who, what's this unqualified, unsolicited information, advice? Like, and
Mm-hmm.
usually it's not polite advice, constructive either. I'm just like, okay, man, like, I'm not trying to be mean, but what the fuck do you know, man? And it's not like it's, like I said, there's a nice way and there's a mean way to say things. And usually it's mean the way that people give it. But
Right.
for me, the hate that I got was so like from family. I had family who my grandfather, also named George, helped immigrate to Australia and helped them start their businesses that are now billionaires. And when I asked them, hey, can we get a coffee and have some advice? They're like, look, you're a bit arrogant. You got to relax a bit. Just go to school and, do what you're told. I'm like, why are you roasting me? Why are you trying to kill my spirit when I'm just trying to do what I'm doing? I don't think I've been arrogant to ask to buy you a coffee and here, get some advice. Like, fuck me. Like some hate is so out of check. Um, and even me in all my anger, I was mature enough to be like, I think they're going through their own stuff. I think it's their own trauma. I don't think that's their honest opinion. Whatever. Am I going to forget? No. Can I forgive? Sure. No problem.
Yeah. And with that, I just see it as like, sometimes, unfortunately, people want to see you do good, but they don't want to see you do better than
Yeah.
them. So that's probably the energy that maybe you get, and also like some other people receive that as well, and it's totally fine. But I think what I, based on our conversation and your story, and like just looking up everything, like what you're creating is just so exciting and it's so impactful, and the fact that you're also able to give back and teach young people, like things about life and business and all of that, like your knowledge is, at the end of the day, it's like, yes, you achieve all these things, but it's really important to give back
Yeah.
and to think about the people, and to think about the what impact am I making with the work that I'm creating today. I love that
Yeah.
so
And
much.
look, I know I've said a lot of about the people who haven't helped and have talked shit, but like I also had like my mentors, Jared Codling and Rowan Coons, have been like fathers to me. Like I would not be anywhere near the person I am or done anything that I've done without these two people. And then I'd add to that list my own mother. Without these people being fantastic to me, I'm nothing. I am nothing. Now, did I do the work that they advised? Yeah, but these people were fundamental to me. And then even further to your point, it's like we said, YouTube videos, people sharing their stories, they might feel like, oh, I'm just saying a silly story from my life. It's so impactful to me. And like, I had the privilege to be inspired by Gary Vee early in my entrepreneurial career to start my businesses. And then he became a client. And when I sat down with him, I'm like, dog, I got to start this by saying thank you. Cause like I owe you one. And then I'm like, all right, let's get to work. But like the YouTube videos, all this content, it's sometimes it's not even so monetizable to share stories. Maybe it's not going to be worth it to share the stories, but that inspiration is very valuable to people. And if I can give back 1% of what my mentors and my mother's given to me, I'd be happy.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, George, I can talk, we can talk for hours. Literally, we can talk for a really long time. But thank you so much. We're a little bit over time, but it's totally fine. I loved this conversation. But thank you so much for just giving back and just pouring your heart out into this conversation and providing so much value. I loved it so much. But just to kind of like close off this session, the episode, I love asking this question to all of my guests, and it's very interesting because I get a different answer. So, what does inherent success mean to you?
I would say when I hear inherent success, I think of a conversation I had with a friend who we had a full argument about this. He believed that greatness, you can be great even if you're not successful yet. And I believed you were great once you'd done it, you know. And he goes, no, greatness is within you. It's just you realize it. And I think that's what I believe inherent success is. And I later agreed with him. I'm like, you know what, you're right. Because you got to believe in your greatness. You got to believe in your inherent success is going to
Mm,
come at some point to make it happen at some point. Um, so yeah, that's what it means. It's like this internal belief, even though like you got nothing to prove, your hands are empty, like I've done nothing, you got to believe something's possible.
beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much, George. And where can people find you?
Yeah, georgemoulos.com is my website. E-commerce brokers is my business. George Moulos on Instagram, YouTube. Yeah, they can find me there. And yeah, thanks for having me on. This has probably been my favorite podcast. You've asked like the best questions. I've done too many podcasts, but you've asked really good questions. You made it very easy for me to share everything. You made it feel very safe for me to be vulnerable and say all
I
my
love
crazy stories.
that.
So really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, like I said in the beginning, we have fun. It's just like a great conversation with a friend talking about life and your story and like what really excites you right now. So I love everything and thank you so much again, George. Guys, if you have found any value in this video, I will put his information in the description. That way you can give him a follow, look him up. Also, if you're looking for coaching and business as well. So thank you guys so much for watching and listening. And if you found any value in this video, make sure to like, share, subscribe. Also, make sure you also set your notifications to be notified for the next episode. And thank you. Stay tuned.